All right, well, let's get started. Well, again, I want to welcome everyone to the RCR Wireless News CRM webinar. My name is Dan Meyer. I'm Editor-in-Chief of RCR Wireless News. And today we will be discussing the CRM market. Okay, next slide. There we go. All right. Joining me today on this webinar will be Sheryl Kingstone, who's a Director of Research at 451 Research, which is also part of a Yankee Group, and Nibha Aggarwal, who is a Senior Director at Amdocs. All right. Along with our panel members, we will look at where we are in the current CRM market, taking a look at how the CRM market is currently being addressed and how it's expected to change as mobile operators and vendors tap into new information streams in their attempt to predict and react to subscriber health. For this 1-hour webinar, I'll first provide a quick overview of some of the information in a story we're releasing today looking at the CRM market, as you can see on screen. You can also check out that story on the rcrwireless.com website. We will then bring on our panel members to provide some further insight into various segments of the market, including a panel discussion on a handful of topics. The plan is to leave the final 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A for those of you who are listening in on the webinar. Please feel free during the webinar to send any questions along using the GoToMeetings control panel there. There's a questions tab there. If you have a question for a specific member of the panel, please make sure to include their name in the question as well. For those that might be having any audio difficulties, we will try to speak as loudly and clearly as possible, but also please make sure to check the audio settings on your computer. All right, next slide there. All right, so here's just a quick slide here giving some background on RCR Wireless News. We've been covering the mobile space for more than 30 years and have a pretty lengthy history in covering the wireless ecosystem. All right, so for a quick overview, I want to start by giving this overview on the CRM market, tapping into some of the findings from that new report I mentioned that we're releasing today on the topic. Some of the things discussed in the report include how the impact of increased competition in saturated markets has impacted how mobile operators have approached the CRM market. A lot of them have had to kind of change their previous mindset of kind of low-hanging fruit excuse where new customers were always out there and available, so operators tended to kind of look at current customers as not being very important because they could always be replaced with new customers out there. Also, the impact that the move to all IP networks has had on how operators have approached CRM. There's now a lot more information moving across their networks, and operators are now able to really tap into a deeper pool of resources when it comes to seeing what's happening on their networks and how they can react to what customers are needing and what they're seeing on their networks. This also plays a bit into the software revolution that's happening across the telecom space now as well. Virtualization and different forms like that have really impacted how operators have approached CRM and how the market has reacted to CRM solutions. And also take a look at the social media aspect of this as well. Obviously, social media has become a very important contact point for operators when it comes to realizing what's happening on their networks. Consumers have become very open about expressing any sort of pleasures or displeasures with their interactions with their mobile operators. And so social media has become a very important part of the CRM platforms. All right. One thing we did with the report is kind of taking a look at what CRM is, and obviously CRM has various connotations to it, whether it's customer relationship management or CEM or different acronyms like that. But in the end, what it really results in is it's big money and big opportunities for the vendors and for operators. As you can see here on the slide, there are several reports that have come out on the topic and the importance and financial gains that are possible when it comes to the CRM space. And I know a little bit later on here, Sheryl from 451 Research will have some numbers of her own as well on the CRM and CEM market. As I mentioned earlier, one of the important parts of CRM really has become for operators is in fighting churn. A number of the companies I spoke with for this report talked about how the importance of fighting churn has really increased over the past 12 to 18 months, especially in saturated markets, more established markets where the saturation level is at 100% or more. There's not just that base of new customers that can just be tapped into to replace old customers. Mobile operators are really having to really fight to keep their customers now. It's not just lip service anymore. That doesn't seem like it's been in the past. As you can see from one of the quotes here from C-Spire, they were just talking about the fact that it's not just ability to tap into or to take customers from their rivals. It's now a matter of keeping customers. It's just a simple math issue there, as Justin Croft mentioned. So, and also as we've seen across the market in the past couple of months, there's been various pricing moves by mobile operators, whether it's paying off ETFs or different rate plans that shows that operators are really being more aggressive now when it comes to and one thing, keeping customers also and trying to target customers from their rivals. So that's become a very big important part to make sure that CRM platforms are up to speed and able to really handle customer needs now. One thing that was also brought up with a lot of people I spoke with was the importance of a consistent touch points when it comes to dealing with consumers. Obviously, consumers now are really looking at various methods when it comes to dealing with their carriers, whether it's online or in stores or over the phone too. So one thing that was brought up was that the importance of making sure that all those outlets have what people were calling the single version of the truth, or basically making sure that when a customer interacts with a carrier, whether it's through the various models, that they're getting the same message from the carrier. If they're getting multiple messages, then the customer gets confused and perhaps leads to a churn situation there. That was kind of brought up in the fact that it's important to keep a constant rate catalogs across all of the touch points as well, making sure that when customers do contact their operators, that they're getting the same information when it comes to rate plans or various things like that, so that they maintain a happy customer. This is also important when it comes to real-time or near real-time sharing of information across the organization. Obviously, you have to make sure that if a customer goes into a retail store, has interaction with a customer relationship person there, that if they then go home and call the carrier looking to double check on some information, that the same information has been shared across the organization, so the customer doesn't get different stories from the same company. So that's an important part too. And as someone mentioned as well, just in general, when someone calls into a call center, generally customers are only doing so if there's something wrong with their service. So typically, those calls start off on the wrong foot to begin with. So it's really important for carriers to make sure that they don't make a situation worse when someone calls in. So that's also an important aspect as well. The social part of it, again, has become an important part of interactions. Consumers are really taken to whether it's Facebook or Twitter or various social channels to interact with the carriers and to also kind of express their views of how a carrier has treated them. A Coleman Park study here showed that customers are definitely interested in more interactions with carriers, but the challenge for carriers obviously is making sure that they're interacting with a true customer. And so that was one thing that was brought up by a lot of people is, being able to really verify that you're dealing with an actual customer is something that needs to be pushed going forward. Another thing that was brought up was, how do you handle interactions in a social environment? If a customer has a problem, say using Twitter or Facebook, it's always good to talk to that, obviously interact with that customer as quick as possible. But there's also the challenge of, do you want to handle this problem in a public or private manner? Some people were saying that if you have it in a public manner, you have to make sure you do a good job of handling the situation. Otherwise, everyone will see that you're not being able to handle it in a concise way. Or if you want to take that issue offline or into a private situation, might be a better way to go. So that's kind of a challenge for operators. And also, as John Phelan there mentioned, when it comes to mastering social, it's always difficult to find out if a person is truly having a bad experience or just having a bad day. That's obviously a big challenge for operators when it comes to social. The experience there is also always a challenge to get a handle on. So. And then also, and finally here, just touch a bit on the impact of software when it comes to CRM platforms. Obviously, virtualization has become a big part of the environment. Big NFV and SDN have become kind of the new acronyms kind of coming across the space. And obviously, operators are looking to tap into virtualization moves to make their CRM platforms more agile and easier to scale as well. So a lot of them we're talking about the move there. We're still in the early stages of that, but it does seem like there's a lot of interest from both the carrier community and also vendors when it comes to virtualizing CRM platforms. Big data, obviously there's lots of information that can be pulled out of these networks, and so the challenge is really how do you dive into that information, how do you parse it out in a good solid method that can be actionable for CRM platforms. And so Hadoop was mentioned as one of the platforms that can be used to really dig into these platforms, into the big data solutions, and pull out the right information. And obviously, an integrated approach is key to all of this to make sure that these are all being used across the organization so that there's no lapse there when it comes to a customer dealing with a situation. All right. And with that, now we'll bring on some true expertise in this matter. So I want to now bring on Sheryl Kingstone from 451 Research to dig in a bit more when it comes to the CRM space. So Sheryl, thanks for joining us today. We know you're fighting a cold there. We definitely appreciate you taking the time and providing some more insight today.
Yes, not a problem. Thank you. Yes, it'd be great if I really had this low, sexy voice every day of the week. But to be honest, I really don't. So if I sniffle, I apologize. But I did want to not show up today and discuss something that's been near and dear to my heart. I've been an analyst for 15 years, focusing on customer experience management and customer experience as it relates to the telecom industry. So it's a great topic. And so I just have a few slides here to go over. When we talk about the industry needing work and the fact that, Dan brought up some great strategies that are working. He brought up where C-Spire is going. That's a great example of a company that has actually looked across the entire customer experience and promoted some work around there that we can talk a little bit about later. But when we talk about Yankee Group's definition of what customer experience is, it really is to be consistent, like Dan said, across all the touch points, to be transparent, which is all about trust, and to be dynamic across all four dimensions. And the four dimensions that I'm talking about is around company and brand, products and services, the channel, and delivery and operations. And so if we dive a little bit more deeply around what that 4% is, 2%, 8%, and 15%, and where we're doing well and not doing well, holistically, we're doing poorly across all the dimensions. And the reasons for that is, while we might be doing okay in company and brand, if you look at what goes into that, it's around service provided, brand, and reputation, of course, but it's also around loyalty programs and discounts and promotions. And believe it or not, we're not really that bad. I have individual marks that I can send along, but overall, the brand and the reputation, we're doing okay there as an industry. Where we're doing poorly is loyalty programs. We really don't do well at rewarding our existing customers, and we do better at giving discounts and promotions to new customers. And so that's where C-Spire stepped up to the plate, and they do really well with announcing more loyalty programs that have really entrenched in building that program for their existing customers. If we look at products and services, we're actually not doing pretty bad there, but believe it or not, the highest actual satisfaction rate happens to be pricing, even though it is one of the biggest churn factors that I'll get on a little bit later. But so variety of services, digital content, all of those are where we're actually failing on the customer experience. And then leading into channel, the best actual, which isn't even that great, it's around 4% and a positive NPS score. The worst has to do with our retail stores. It has to do with our mobile phone application and web self-service, and those are incredible touch points that we really have to understand how to do. And while the contact center might be in a positive mode, we have newer channels that Nibha's going to talk about around social and how we can really meet those needs of the customers in those channels. But I can tell you right now that the weakest link across all these dimensions is the channel. So it's really good that you're here listening today, because we really do have to understand how to improve the overall customer experience across all of these channels. Again, what Dan stressed about the touch points. And then lastly, around delivery. When we talk about delivery and operations, that's really about billing, and it's about network data quality and voice service quality. And the voice service quality happens to be the highest of the NPS scores at around 24, 26%. Network data quality goes down around 12%, and transparent billing is fairly lower than that to get to the average of 15%. So we've done a lot of work on the delivery and the operation side, but we haven't really improved it enough to be satisfied with the overall experience. And then as we start as an industry moving over to new technologies around VoLTE, then we're going to start potentially impacting service quality if we don't necessarily get a handle on how to measure that. So it is all about understanding the customer experience about all four of these dimensions. And so if you take a look at churn and why the channel is so important, and yes, price is a major churn driver, and Dan said price is up there to be addressed, but the problem is if all we're differentiating on is price, we're not doing a service to ourselves as an industry, nor are we doing a service to the industry from the overall customer experience standpoint, because we're not valuing the overall service. And so when I take a look beyond price and I look at a major churn driver, And I look even beyond the network, and you add it up, and you look at high churners, they leave because of poor service. And so we do have, 30% not at all likely to churn, so it's good, but we still have a large portion of neutrals and potentially very likely and somewhat likely. So there is still an interest in a problem in the industry when it comes to what's driving churn. And so a lot of the strategies around that has been taking a look at what our customers want. So that's where a lot of the strategies around CRM have come into play, around understanding what our customers want in the social space by paying attention to what they're doing. But it all comes down to insight. What do our customers want, and how can we deliver that? And that's where there has been a huge trend, yes, around virtualization and big data, but to provide insight to not just churn, but what's going to keep our customers happy? What is the next best offer? What can we do to be more proactive with our service? If we are shifting more into VoLTE, what are we doing to ensure that those calls get handled properly, and what is our ongoing network service quality, and how does that impact the overall quality of experience? And it isn't just about the analytics in a silo. It's about taking a look at information that you have in your CRM systems, about taking information that you have in the network around the mobile user experience, the drop calls, the throughput rates, and tying that to perception. So you need a lot of these. This is where a lot of the big data solutions coming into play, because it isn't just about the individual mobile user behavior. It's not just about the CRM data. It's not just about the billing data. It's about understanding hidden patterns and correlations so that we can get at the churn and not just fight on price, but what is the best offer, what is the next best action. And what is people saying out in the social media is a feed into a lot of ways that we can impact churn, so that, as Ceasefire said earlier, we have to keep our current customers happy. And so I do want to dive down a little bit more into what actual users want from a channel, and then I'll give a little bit more about that channel and why it's so important. So users want more control. And so they post on Facebook because the devices is right there. So 54% would like to post a status update on Facebook or a social site and expect their operator to respond. So you're going to see a lot more about how to handle those customers that are out there on the social, and how can we respond quickly, transparently, with a situation that is going to keep them happy. But then we also want to help self-service, right? So if we look at these mobile devices, consumers want to do a lot more from these devices because they don't really want to call customer care. And so there's a lot more we can do around helping our customers help themselves. And the fact that we're not looking at embracing this digital experience to its full extent is something that really needs to be evaluated in the future. And so when we're taking a look at issues around price, 71% would like to have more control over their pricing and pricing plans. And so we might have the ability to offer them, these upgrades or these additional plans, like small-time offers or video analytics, these certain one-off, one-time plans. Sometimes some of the telcos can offer that on the self-service, but a lot of times you can't. But the other thing we can't really do is take a look at our pricing and understanding, am I on the right plan? And that drives the call into the call center, and that drives inconsistent communication. So we have to be more transparent across multiple different touch points. Then they want to have more control over how to improve their device usage. A lot of times we have these ambiguous charges onto our phone, and while we've gotten better with billings, we still have a problem with understanding how are we using our data, why are we potentially going over our data. Now we have issues around family share plans and data consumption control, and really giving more power back to the account holders to understand what's going on with the battery, what's going on with my usage, what's going on with my kids' plans, and why are we getting these one-off fees. I mean, we still, to this day, half an hour before this call, I get my Analyst bill. I'm from Canada. And what do I have? I have this miscellaneous vague charge for $112 onto my bill. And I'm thinking, whatever. So, of course, the first thing I do is cut and paste it into the internet, and I then see that it's some cell phone charge for having a plan that was underpriced for the device we had, which was not true. They did some change on my plan, which put an erroneous charge on there. So not only were they transparent for what the charge was for, I had to go the extra step to even look up what the code was for, but it was just a very high erroneous charge, which made me then call in. And I couldn't even, by the way, click on that and then self-serve myself and promote and have it tracked via the channel that I was on. So again, cross-channel is only so good, but you have to enable it as it goes. And so why I say the importance of different channels is really critical gets to my next slide. Because when you take a look at some of these older interaction channels, you take a look at being able to pick up the home telephone. The good news is, the really good news is, especially for contact centers out there, the home telephone is going down. The bad news is it doesn't necessarily mean they're not calling, right? So the home telephone is going down, but the mobile phone is being picked up. And so the calls to the contact center are not going away. Then we take a look at email, online chat, company website. Yeah, they're going down as compared to the volume of transactions or preferences for the customer interaction channel. And what has increased is things like social media, communications to social media, communications to social media on your mobile phone, speaking to the mobile phone customer service representative, browsing the website on their mobile phone, but SMS texting, that's not a self-service initiative. That has to do with the assisted service. You know, why couldn't I take a look at my bill and immediately just text the company and find out what is this charge? Why did I have to wait on hold for half an hour to figure out what it was? I mean, and this is today. Mobile self-service is another area. Again, all those stats that you saw earlier when the consumers want, here is the reason why. It's a 12% differential increase in preference channel, and these are preference channels for first, second, or third. So the way we look at it and the way we track it is over the years we take a look at the first, second, and third channel preferences that consumers want to use to interact with service providers over issues that they have with their phone or their service or their plan. And so that's why it's really relevant to understand what's going on here. Now, stack rank, yes, they're still picking up the phone. Yes, they're still emailing. Yes, they still have online chat. But it's the differential picking it up between the growth between 2010 and 2014. And then just continuing on, when we take a look at the topic for today that we're going to go in a little bit more depth for social media is changing the face of communications. And so a lot of social media is on still your traditional PC laptop today. As you'll see, that's the highest, 54% at least daily. There's still a huge percent of users. And when you then take a look at this by age bracket, the mobile phone increases tremendously for the younger generations, as we all know and as we all live and breathe and watch our children out there. But the fact that it's daily, the fact that they're not just once a week, not less frequent than once a week, but 54% are doing it daily, either on their tablets or their mobile phone or their laptop. And so that's what we have to take a look at if we correlate this question with the question of they really want their service provider to respond to them in their social network of choice. So that's not just Facebook, that's not just Twitter, that's taking a look at where I am, when I am, and delivering it to my sense of where I am in the social world is what is absolutely critical. And so when you take a look at things like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, you have to be not just social with Facebook, you have to be across all of them and watch all of them and track all of them. And then as much as you can, try to correlate that information and bring it back into your CRM system so that you understand who is this person, how can we authenticate, how can we take it into a private setting, and then how can we then make sure that they get what they need. And so that needs a solution that can then take a look across all these channels and understand and communicate with the consumer in these new worlds. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Dan. Here is some of my customer information. I need to update this email address also. But I can be reached here, and I can also be reached at Sheryl.Kingstone@451research.com. 451 Research and Yankee Group have merged as of about a year and a half ago, but it was fully as of this past July, so it is fairly new. And so I can be reached in both places.
That sounds great. Well, hey, thanks, Sheryl, so much for the insight there, and thanks for holding out with us there. I know that cold's been bugging you. Definitely appreciate you taking the time off there. That was impressive. Very impressive.
I was very happy. Thank you.
You did well. Very good about that. Well, I definitely appreciate that. And like I said too, if anybody has any questions for Sheryl or myself, please feel free to use the questions tab there on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll try to spend some time at the end there to get to those questions. But again, thanks Sheryl for the insight today. Well, I know we'll be talking a little bit later here in our panel discussion as well. So, well, with that, I do want to now bring on Nibha Aggarwal, who is the Senior Director at Amdocs, to get a little bit of a vendor perspective on the market with a focus on social. So, Nibha, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks, Sheryl. Those were great slides, really highlighting the problem of the industry and where is CRM going. So actually, one of the things we did as a vendor, we always try to kind of, survey the market. We try to survey the consumers, and we try to understand, what is happening in the industry, what are the emerging trends, because these are the things that actually help us guide our product direction, and these are what we take to our customers to show them what's happening in the marketplace. So one of the things we did is we recently did a survey with Coleman Parks. It was, worldwide, around 4,000, consumers around the world. And the things that we determined is that around 50% of the customers would actually like to communicate with their service providers on social media. And again, for those of us who have been around for a while, it's not really a surprise. I mean, you look at the younger generation and they pick up the phone, not to make a phone call, but to either text or to get on, their Facebook or do whatnot. They just don't pick up the phone to call anymore. So it's hardly a surprise. And also, we try to find out if it's just an intent or is it that something that they're really doing. And around 54%, and that number completely coincides with what you reported, Sheryl, so we know that it's accurate. Around 54% of the consumers are already reaching out to service providers on their social media, looking for information on outages, and whatever, whatnot. So it's already happened. Not it's just happening, it has already happened. And in terms of response, about half of them, are happy to get a response within half an hour, which is really not that bad if you think about it. They actually expect a response in half an hour. But what is also happening in the marketplace is that about 3 in 4 of these cries for help are not being answered. So when I say not being answered, either they're not being answered at all, or customers are actually getting a generic response that is not helping with resolve their issue. And when that happens, customers actually pick up the phone and call because they have no choice. And again, as Sheryl pointed out, you try various channels, you try social media, you try self-service. The problem doesn't go away. So in order to resolve the problem, the customers start with one channel first, and then they switch on till they get a resolution to their issue. And unfortunately, most of the time, what is happening is that about 80% of the consumers who first started the interaction on social media end up calling the contact center to resolve their issue. And that's really what's happening in the marketplace. So how can we actually help service providers address this challenge? So the way we do it, which is, Amdocs just recently launched a solution called Amdocs Social Care. And what we do is really, our goal is to engage, through social media to quickly, figure out what the problem is, figure out the customer care related issue, and actually resolve that issue in a satisfactory manner. And the way we do it is, we have broken it down into 3 simple processes, if you will. So the first thing we actually do is we try to filter, what is it that matters? What is relevant from the vast array of social media posts? And as we all know, people just post about everything and anything that comes to their mind. And wading through all of that ocean of noise and trying to determine what is relevant is also, quite a challenge. And then once we actually figure out, what it is, then we start, our categorization engine, we start categorizing those posts into what is it? Is it related to customer care? If it is related to customer care, what is it about? Is it related to account? Is it related to, technical issue? What is it that it's related to? And from that point on, we actually start routing that call. And I keep mentioning call. It's really a social call because it's a social interaction, if you will. So we start routing it to the right set of agents who can actually help. So next one, please. So next thing we do is recognize the customer. And here I want to pause and digress for a minute, because one of the reasons why you see that 3 and 4 shouts are not being addressed is because the service providers don't know who the customer is. I'm Nibha Aggarwal. I have a cell phone number, but again, on social media, I could be ABC123. So if ABC123 is actually tweeting, saying, hey, I got hit by a hefty bill, service provider has no means of knowing who I am. And as a result of that, most of the time you will get a generic post saying, hey, we are really sorry to hear that, please contact us at, 1-800-TELUS, for example, or whatever the situation might be. And you connect with them, through that. So really, you cannot have an issue resolution because the complete context of the customer cannot be applied. So the first thing we do is we actually try to link the social identity of the customer to the BSS customer record. So what we will do is actually we'll take the conversation private, say, hey, we're really sorry, we would like to help you. Tell us your mobile account number, or tell us your name, or, whatever, our ideas. We try to determine that. And one of the things that most service providers complain, or, were worried about, not complain, they were concerned about, is the fact that consumers would not be willing to share their social identity. And as a matter of fact, when we did our survey, we actually found out that a lot of customers would be willing to share their identity simply because they're used to the fact that the first thing you do when you call a contact center is you tell them that your phone number. Otherwise, they can't help you. I mean, if I try to stay an anonymous customer when I call, I'm not going to get my issue resolved. And consumers are actually fully aware of that, and they're really willing to swap, that they're willing to reveal their social identity in exchange for better service. Again, not that big a surprise. It wasn't a big surprise for us, but, it was a good result to show that customers are actually willing to do that. And once we capture the identity, we actually try to put the interaction in the complete for a complete customer 360-degree view of the customer for complete customer history. So we store that interaction now in our CRM database, and we apply the correct context so that now we can actually start resolving the issue based on the customer context. So if the customer is saying my bill is too high, we can now go down and try to figure out what is it, who is the customer, what is the issue, and how can the issue be resolved. So next slide, please, Dan. So the third thing that we do is resolve. And here again, I want to point out that the social call is now going to a contact center agent. And it is an agent who is actually dealing with your calls in the call center 1 minute, and then the next minute is the same agent using the same set of tools, using the same desktop, and now they get a social media interaction, and they can provide, a completely consistent user experience. So if the user called the contact center, or if they reached across social media, they would get a completely consistent response to the inquiry. And they would get a completely consistent resolution, as a matter of fact, to the inquiry. And from a call center agent perspective, I mean, you're not logging into any new application, you're not logging into any new tools. All you're doing, you have the same desktop, the inquiry comes in. Instead of an analog phone call, now it's coming as almost, think of it as a nicer version of chat. It's almost coming in as a chat, and the agent can use their knowledge and the tools now to respond to that inquiry. And that's how you can get actually very rapid and very accurate resolution. And again, on the back end, the same set of tools, kick in. So, we open the case, we open trouble ticket, we can track it, we can figure out how long it took to resolve the issue, we can close the loop, find out was the issue actually resolved. We can, have all those KPIs and metrics on the back end that are very, very useful for service provider. And once all the issue is resolved, the case is closed, and then, the interaction is tracked. So that's really how we are providing solution to this problem.
Great. Well, thanks, Nibha. Definitely appreciate the insight there. And I know we're going to dig in a little bit more into the social as well on this, because again, that's a big part of the CRM platform. So again, thank you for the time on that. And again, for those who are listening in, if you do have any questions for myself or Sheryl or Nibha, please feel free to send those in on the go to webinar control panel there. There's a questions tab. Just send us questions in, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the webinar here. But with that, I do want to kind of move on to kind of a little bit of a panel discussion here on this topic. And one thing, I start off maybe with Sheryl, and it's funny because one of the questions I was going to have for you when I initially wrote it, I thought it was kind of a basic, maybe even a dumb question, which was kind of what do operators gain from having a CRM platform? But then hearing about your interaction just today with your mobile operator, it seems like operators, even big ones, are still just struggling with CRM. It seems like just trying to interact with their customers. And obviously, just from hearing your story, there's obviously a lot to gain by having these things better in place and more optimized, I guess. So maybe that is a good question. What do operators have to gain from having these platforms in place?
Well, the lesson learned there is you can have a CRM system, you can have a billing system, analytics, but if you don't necessarily use it in an efficient process and understand what data is being consumed and understand what your billing system is posting to your account, it doesn't matter how good your CRM system is. You're still going to have, again, the customer calling because of a question on their bill, which, again, CRM systems don't really control the bill. It's a billing system.
Yeah.
So we do have some issues out there with some of the legacy solutions and not being flexible enough to meet the needs of the customer today. And so that's where you take a look at what you mentioned earlier around ceasefire and everyone moving to more virtualized systems today. Again, that's to be more agile, to then move some of these solutions into more of the next generation solution and stop working from their old legacy solutions that are very hard to manage, hard to update, hard to track. And so it's coming back again, because just because you did it 10 years ago doesn't mean it's working today.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. It does seem like it has to be an integrated approach to this. Like you said, you've got to have billing tied into this, you've got to have social tied into this. You have all these things tied in together to make this. It seems like to make this really work for the customer. Otherwise, these big gaping holes that customers are going to fall into. And
telcos have thousands and thousands of systems that they have to either migrate or eventually end of life. AT&T themselves has said they're turning on a system a day, and they're going to be done by like 2020. I'd have to pull the stats, but it was like they have 1,000 systems just to virtualize and turn down. So it's not easy for these guys.
Sure. Yeah, obviously, it's a big challenge for them there. But I guess maybe on this topic as well. Looking at the interaction with social. I know most operators do have some sort of social interaction, some more than others. I know I talked to ceasefire about their social interaction with customers, and they even admitted that they're not too aggressive in that front just because it's a resource issue and it's still kind of new to them. But it does seem like that operators do need to have at least some sort of finger on the pulse when it comes to what's happening in these social interactions. I guess what do operators really have to gain when it comes to going with a more aggressive social outlook on their CRM operations?
Operators actually have a lot to gain. I think one of the things that is happening, and a lot of them are actually realizing it now, is the fact that they're completely, blind to what's happening in the social media channel. And what started happening initially is that it was, more for, as you said, keeping a finger on the pulse, looking for brand and looking for stuff like that. And then what started happening is that now it's customer care calls coming in. And one of the opportunities that service providers are missing right now is that if they don't handle those calls, they're missing the opportunity to deflect those calls. And we actually did recently a service provider survey and trying to figure out how many of or what percentage of their call volume can be deflected across social media. And the answer was 10%. That's a pretty significant call volume that actually can be handled across social media. And as a result of that, now an operator, instead of handling like one analog call that costs, at least in North America, around $8 to $10 per call, suddenly now your agent can handle anywhere between 6 to 8 simultaneous interactions because you have a lag. Customers are willing to wait for half an hour to get a response. Your agent can now suddenly handle like 6 to 8 simultaneous interactions instead of one analog call. So think about, the decrease in cost that you would gain, and with this call deflection for 10% of your call volume, and it's 10% today, and it's rapidly rising, and service providers are aware of that. So I think those are the biggest advantage. And the third thing is the consistency. And I think, we all know that, you try, even within a call center, you try one operator, and if you don't get a response, you try the other agent, you call again, you get a completely different response. And consistency is the key. And I think that's definitely one thing they would gain also.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of the interesting part about all this. I mean, obviously, I know companies and carriers are trying to do as best they can, and they, always put a strong face on how they're approaching this. But I think we've all interacted with our mobile operator at one point or another, and seem to have kind of fallen into these gaps. And we realize that it's still a bit of a challenge. And maybe looking at that, I mean, obviously, Sheryl, with your with your interaction today with your mobile operator, I mean, obviously there's still some challenges there. But I guess looking maybe even outside of perhaps one operator like that, I mean, how well have mobile operators to this point, do you think, handled this move to kind of this new evolution of CRM and CEM? And do you think in general that they're doing a good job, or obviously there's probably more needs to be done, but how are we looking, I guess, at this point in time?
We've had pockets of success, and it's not from lack of trying. So the telcos don't go out of their way to annoy us as much as we think they do. They have spent a lot of money trying to give the tools to the agents to make sure that their jobs are handled efficiently and effectively. They've spent a lot of money on new billing systems. They've spent a lot of money on trying to make their self-service solutions more effective. The problem is that the minute they get just so forward, the customer's expectations have leaped faster than they have actually performed. And so that's why it's like, okay, so we're inching our way forward, but for every 2 steps we make forward, we take 3 steps back sometimes. And so it's hard to explain, because literally if I look at the Net Promoter Scores from year after year after year, we have made no progress. But I can tell you for a fact that the top telcos in the world, and even some of the tier 2 and tier 3, have spent money, significant amount of money, trying to improve the overall customer experience. And so, why haven't we done a better job at it is really the question. Why are we spending all this money and not making strategic inroads into meeting Net Promoter Scores that are as high as some of, the other industries that are out there that are at least, let's get into the 50s, 40s, 50s. Maybe we don't have to be into the 70s and 80s like an Apple, but we should at least improve versus what we've seen over the last 1%, 2% up and down.
Yeah, that's a good point there. You're right. I mean, obviously billions have been spent on trying to improve these things. Like you said, it's pretty much just kept pace for the most part, which I guess is sort of sad. But I mean, obviously I know operators are kind of the central point of focus when it comes to any sort of issue with a cellular service. I mean, obviously if a phone has a problem, usually the customer is not going to call Apple. They're going to end up calling or try to interact with their carrier. So that kind of puts a lot more burden on them. But again, that's a burden that their customers are paying a monthly fee for their service, and so that's part of the game, is that the operator needs to be ready for those types of challenges. So
now the retail store, by the way. So some of the changes that we've started to recently make, finally, Verizon again has really taken a look at their retail stores, and Orange in Europe has taken a look at their retail stores and really learned from Apple, and has made it not just about selling, but as an interaction, a destination. And so they're trying to make more and more of these stores. Now, you're not going to walk into every corner of Verizon store and see this, but they're trying to make an example of their retail stores to be a lot more interactive, using beacons, using self-service, using some of these digital displays. But when it comes down to it, some of the failures has to do with training of just the employees, which has nothing to do with actual service themselves. So they are making inroads, and so there are unique improvements out there by vendor that I can point to at least.
Yeah, definitely. There's some movements being made there, but and you bring up a good point too, there, Sheryl, and something I want to, I guess, bring up in Nibha on the social side. I mean, obviously, it's for a carrier to deploy a social platform, it's obviously it makes sense to do it, but it does seem like consumers are a fickle bunch, and the platform to deploy could be changing. Obviously, right now it does seem like Facebook and Twitter are perhaps the 2 most important ones that are out there. But obviously, next week or next year or whatever, next month, it could be a whole different platform. I guess what sort of challenge is it for operators to really, stay on top of what the kids nowadays are using when it comes to interacting with their operator. It seems like that's kind of in itself almost a full-time job, making sure that you're on top of whatever it is that next social media interaction point is for operators.
Absolutely. And actually, we also, as a CRM vendor, we also face a brunt for it, because I was just talking to some of our R&D folks. And this is an interesting point, because they were saying the same thing, that we don't know. I mean, like today it's Facebook. I mean, remember MySpace? It used to be so hot in the, when was that? I think it was 2008 or something. And nobody even knows about it anymore. Twitter was almost on the verge of collapse, and then, it came alive. I mean, you just don't know what will change. So this is, just a social media platform. And then there are other things like, Cloud Score, for example. Right now, Cloud is the one that is hottest thing on the block for finding out the influencer score. What will it be tomorrow? We don't know. Is it going to be the number of followers? Is it going to be the number of friends? Is it going to be the number of, you put your name there? We don't know that. So that's definitely a big challenge. And I think as a vendor, since we are the one who are integrating with these platforms, it's definitely something that we really have to be on the lookout for. And I think from a service provider perspective, there are other bigger problems. One is the backend systems. I mean, I think Sheryl has already pointed it out. The data today is very siloed. And again, a variety of reasons. It's, through acquisitions and everything. So, and that is compounded by the fact that there are many channels now on the front end. And most of the service providers we talked to were actually storing all these, some were not even storing interactions, to be honest. But the others that were storing it are storing it as siloed data. So ABC123 said, your service sucks, for example. They would store their interaction, but they have no idea who ABC123 is. They have no idea what to do with that interaction. So great, the interaction is stored. What do you do next? Oh, well, that's a different question. And personnel is a great challenge because, again, typically, I mean, at least from a social media perspective, and we saw that also in the self-service perspective, that these domains typically report into marketing because, you're communicating with your customers. So typically these used to go into marketing, and, marketing folks would start taking a look into it and then try to figure out what to do with it. But now, increasingly, people are using self-service, as for self-service. They're not using it, to vent their opinion. Same thing is happening with social media. People are not just saying, whatever they want to say. Some people are actually looking for help on customer care-related issues. So as a result of that, it has to be routed to the right personnel. And we saw that several of our very large customers actually had, where, they were like social media ninja teams just taking care of these interactions. And now they realize that no, that's not working out. It has to be part of customer care. And now some of them are actually rolling the two together. So clearly there are those issues also that need to be taken, the personnel and, who has the right set of resources, those issues have to be taken into account as well.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Well, that makes sense. Well, I mean, I guess looking at that siloed approach, and obviously that's been kind of the challenge for these operators going, in the past and still ongoing. And I know, Sheryl, when I talked to you for the report I did on this topic here, I know we talked a little bit about some of these challenges and what operators really need to do going forward to kind of overcome these issues. And I think, I remember you mentioned that at that time that the siloed approach is something that just needs to be fixed or broken down or whatever it is. I guess, maybe looking forward and, what can these operators do from your point of view, what needs to be done to really, I guess, provide some progress on these CRM platforms? Because obviously, there are all these big challenges like you mentioned, but what are some of the initial steps that could be taken, and what can they do to at least get the ball rolling and kind of fix some of these issues?
Well, okay, you got to look at it in two fronts. The silos, as Nibha was talking about, with respect to, not having a social media group separate from the contact center. That's
sure.
one example of a silo. Another example of a silo that happens consistently with a lot of these telcos is you have your digital world, the self-service world, and then you have your assisted service world, and sometimes the two don't talk. Just basic things like that we're not doing today. And so just getting, and that's primarily due to organizational structure, but also systems. So those are things that are slowly being brought down because they realize that the business process has to cut across those. And so the only thing they can do today from a system standpoint is look at more virtualization or orchestration across the systems because they can't they're not going to just go one day and shut everything off and then bring everything up and voila, it's all integrated. It's just the reality of that happening is not the case. Plus, a lot of the information is scattered all over the place. And so when we do talk about, the analytics side of it is, how much do you keep? How much is in the history? And then how do you react with some of this new unstructured streaming type data that's at the edge? And so there's these new technologies that are now bringing in all of that information. And so what we really have to do is figure out a strategy to eventually get rid of the mess that we have. That's where some of the virtualization technologies are coming into play today. We have to orchestrate across these systems so that we do have that single point of voice and that single view, which we've been talking about since I was an analyst 15 years ago. But the problem there is that single voice has now expanded channels, is what we're talking about here today. So it's not just about CRM single voice, it's about CRM, it's about social, it's about what's going on with the phones, it's about what's going on in the network, and it's about bringing all that into one single source, and that may or may not be your CRM system today. So what can we do to make sure that all of that is at the hands of the right people at the right time, and then empower the right people to get at the access of the data? And so most of it, some of it is technology, and a lot of it is organizational structure.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. You bring up the orchestration aspect. I was just at a TM Forum event this week there in California. I think Nibha's there as well. But that was talked about from a lot of companies, is the fact that, obviously with these legacy systems that are in place and carriers looking to go to virtualization or virtualized platforms, that there is going to be this kind of time frame in between where it's going to be both these things running. And that could be a time frame that lasts 5, 10, 15 years even.
Hopefully
and you have to have something. Yeah, well,
the whole concept will then
true.
be blown out of the water. But, okay.
True, that's true. Yeah, but it's got to be there for a while, and obviously you have to have platforms in place that can talk in between these legacy systems and these new systems to make sure that operators don't, that there's still progress being made and that they're not falling further and further behind because of this. So that's going to be that seems like a huge part of this I guess evolution of these platforms. So. Well, very interesting. Well, I guess I know Nibha. I mean, obviously you guys work with a lot of different companies when it comes to integrating their CRM platforms, billing platforms, and also social as well. I mean, can you provide any sort of, I guess, any sort of example of how a mobile operator really benefited from the integration of social media into their platforms? I mean, I know you mentioned kind of an operator you talked about there, unnamed operator who kind of has made some moves on this, but can you talk a little bit more about maybe an operator, if you can name names, even better, but who have kind of really moved, kind of integrated social more into their platforms, and what sort of benefit that they actually saw from doing so?
Yeah, a couple come to mind, and actually, to be honest with you, most of the activity is happening around APAC, in the Asia Pacific region. Yep. Most of those guys are just so creative, and we go talk to them, and it's pretty phenomenal what they're doing. And one of our customers actually is out of APAC region, and what they have done is that they created like social media avatars. And so what they've done is, so one of the avatar, for example, is a fashionista. And God knows who that fashionista really is. I mean, is this a guy, an old guy sitting there answering the questions? I don't know. But the avatar is that of a fashionista. And, you see all the teenage girls flocking towards that fashionista to ask questions on social media. And to the extent that they actually only want to talk to that avatar. They refuse to talk to anybody else. And then there's an avatar, for example, for a geek or an Uber geek, and the geeks in the world want to go and try to talk to that geek. And it's pretty interesting because they were really showing, they're co-presenting with us at one of the events, and they really have phenomenal results doing or taking this approach for social media. And not only is the cost down, but the other thing that has also happened is they're seen or perceived as a cutting edge, as a cool and hip company, because they're really providing customer care through a social media setting and in a very nice and fun way. And customers are actually very happy. They actually engage a lot more. I mean, the point is that if you start engaging with your customers, they will use it more and more. Whereas if the customer tries to engage with you on social media and they get nothing out of it, they're just not going to go to that channel the next time. You live and you learn. obviously they're not going to go to that channel. They're going to pick up the phone and call because they had a bad experience with it before or an unsatisfactory experience. So that was, one example where I thought it was really cool as to what they're doing, and they're seen as a hip company, and at the same time you are really reducing your costs and increasing your engagement or stickiness with your customer, if you will. And the other example that I've kind of seen, which is kind of more, well known, is, GiftGaff and O2. And just yesterday, I was actually having a discussion with somebody about it. And what GiftGaff did is it's almost like crowdsourced social media. So you can actually just, there are the super users who actually answer the questions, and then there are users who are looking for information. And I think that's another great example of how O2 actually deflected a lot of calls using social media. Now, the only downside with something like that is that this is good for generic questions. So if I'm having trouble with my iOS phone or my recent iPhone 6, it's more of a generic issue, and it could be resolved by a crowdsourced platform. But when it comes down to Sheryl's specific issue that, hey, she has 112 extra bucks, tagged onto her bill, or if I'm having a streaming issue, then you really have to get down to all the BSS data. You have to figure out who is the customer and how can you resolve those issues. And this is where, somebody like, what we are, like Amdocs, where we have our Amdocs Social Care, we kick in because we know exactly what is going on. We have all that information, and we can actually truly deflect those calls. These are not generic calls. These are very specific and very focused calls related to a particular customer. So there we can certainly help. So these were a couple of examples that came to mind, and especially this APAC company, I thought it was just so funny, and everybody laughed every time they present. It's just really cool stuff that they have.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the APAC. Obviously, I know in the report I did too. I talked to a few people, and APAC was brought up quite a bit as kind of the
Right.
example of companies that are really taking the lead when it comes to both social, but just even just general CRM platforms. It seems like they're definitely being a little more, I guess, progressive in terms of what they're doing and kind of how they're interacting with their customers. So very, very interesting to bring that up too. So, well, I think we might have maybe some time here for maybe one quick other topic, maybe just kind of finish up with Sheryl here. You kind of mentioned a bit about virtualization, and that's obviously, I know, a topic we're trying to cover here more at RCR, but it's also a topic that's definitely getting a lot of momentum across the industry there. I guess how big of a role do you think virtualization is going to play kind of in this new move towards more advances in CRM and CEM? Is that going to be a major part of the play there with using virtualization to kind of really push these systems out there?
Well, that's to be determined. I mean, right now, most of the virtualization side of it is really impacting on the core network and some of the network services side of it, and that's beyond my expertise. But a lot of the
Sure.
managed services and cloud services are certainly impacting the traditional CRM space, and eventually will impact some of the, while it's impacting OSS, will impact the BSS space as well. And so I'm doing some research right now on trying to understand how quickly we're able to get some of these traditional operational systems up to the cloud. And some of the other enterprises industries have done a little bit faster move to the cloud. And we'll just wait and see on whether we can really move a lot of the traditional operational systems to the cloud also. We do know that leading telcos have stated the fact that they do want to go there. So I guess it's just how quickly and when will it happen will really be the case, because there is the business case to getting it up there and lowering the total cost of ownership from that standpoint.
Yeah, that makes sense. And maybe Nibha, I mean, obviously from the vendor perspective, obviously I'm guessing virtualization is definitely on your guys' radar. I'm sure it's something you guys are working on as well with your platforms too.
Yes, absolutely. We have divisions, definitely OSS, we see it a lot more. We have this whole NFV, natural network function virtualization. Yes, we are doing. Amdocs is certainly doing a lot. I can't speak to it because I'm not an expert in that.
Exactly. But, it's really mostly in the OSS side, and it will eventually hit the CRM BSS side.
Yes.
Yeah. Very interesting, Christian. Well, great. Well, guys, definitely appreciate the insight there. Sorry we didn't have enough time for any questions there from those listening in, but I think we hopefully covered enough of the topic here, and I definitely wanted to thank, again, our panel members for their great insight today. Thanks so much, guys, for the time today. And also wanted to also remind everyone that for some more information on this topic, feel free to check out the story we have on the rcrwireless.com website on the CRM topic. And I also recommend you guys check out both 451 Research. Check out what Sheryl's done there. A lot of good insight there from her, what she's done on the topic, and also check out what Amdocs has been doing in the space as well, not just from their own products, but just general comments on the industry as well. So great insight there. But again, thanks Sheryl and Nibha for the insight today. We definitely appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, and thanks a lot everyone for joining us, and have a good afternoon. Thanks.